Okay, hi. We're going to talk a little bit about part three of the discourse on method, Descartes' discourse on method. We've been going through the first three parts, and then in the next section, we'll move on and look at the fourth part, particularly where Descartes actually talks about his famous cogito. Okay, so in the third part, Descartes uh, suggests that he needs a morality, and he is rather pragmatic about what he's going to do. So at the beginning of that part, it says, "And finally, as it is not enough, before commencing to rebuild the house in which we live, remember, that it be pulled down and materials and builders provided, or that we engage in the work ourselves, according to a plan which we have before carefully drawn out. But as it is likewise necessary that we be furnished with some other house, in which we may live commodiously during the operations, so that I might not remain irresolute in my actions, while my reason compelled me to suspend my judgment, and that I might not be prevented from living thenceforthward in the greatest possible felicity, happiness, I formed a provisionary code of morals, composed of 3 or 4 maxims with which I am desirous to make you acquainted." And he'll go on to give us the 3 or 4 maxims that he decided to live by while he's, remember, tearing down all his beliefs and starting over from scratch. Descartes, the man that's going to do everything by himself and start over. So the two things that Descartes thinks need to be done. We need to start over, and I need to do it by myself. Now, let's take a step back and think about the role of morality in the other philosophy that we've looked at, Plato's morality. So you might remember this, let me just pull this over a bit, these 5 moral or affective dispositions that we talked about in the Apology: the detachment from worldly goods, the single-minded and single-hearted devotion to the truth, we also described as integrity, willingness to oppose common wisdom, intellectual humility, and a sense of vocation. Okay, and why did Plato? Uh, he didn't set it out this way, but these were things that we found him advocating. And how did the whole thing hold together? Well, there's reasons for why you have to be a certain kind of person in Plato's philosophy in order to be successful at seeking and loving wisdom. So loving wisdom is the first thing. If you're going to love wisdom, then you need to be the kind of person who has that single-minded love and is able to put wisdom uh, before everything else. Another point you might remember, this philosophical insight is not our starting state, right? We start in the cave, and I don't think we wouldn't say it's natural to be in the cave, but it's normal. We are, according to Plato, deluded by our sense experience into thinking that that's all there is. And so getting people to even see that there's something more to life, what he calls philosophy, is the first difficulty. And then to train their vision on it is going to require a little bit of uh, discipline and self purification. Thirdly, philosophy requires hard work, requires time, requires the development of our abilities. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have false starts. And so this again requires the virtues of courage and discipline and patience. Okay. And then finally, uh, we're going to need a teacher. We have to be dragged out of the cave, right? And we're not going to get dragged out of the cave by anybody. We need to trust people. So this is the communal dimension. And if there's a communal dimension, you're going to need a morality, a kind of standard for living that um, puts everybody on the same page and allows for trust. Plato didn't have, at least Socrates didn't have schools. Plato began to set a school up, but we've got a system where we have schools, and we need to know which schools to trust, who to send our children to, who to set them off on the right path so that they will become wise people. So there's lots of reasons why morality is not just necessary and needed, but it's important, and it's a key part of how philosophy works. Now we move to Descartes, and just this idea that it's provisional is already something that maybe we should just, whoa, what's going on with that? Um, Is it a big deal to minimize moral knowledge in the moral life? Okay. Um, I think it could be, because it suggests, first of all, that it's not all that important, especially at the start, right? It doesn't really matter. We need some morality, obviously. While I'm working on this, I have to make some decisions about how I'm going to live. So let's just see what other people are doing. Okay, so is this suggesting an anything will do attitude? His idea of being very conventional, following local custom. Okay, some sense it seems like a good thing. Don't be too weird. Don't be strange. Don't cause a scene. Those are things that I guess could have their place. I mean, they're not always the right thing to do. Okay, but again, that suggests a similar kind of anything will do, like no need to get this right. Okay. But what does it say about Socrates' manner of living? Like Socrates liked to force the question. He thought it was important to force the question. Um, Descartes seems to be saying philosophy or the philosopher should not be a threat. People shouldn't be bothered by the fact that there's a philosopher working out truth. Socrates, I don't think, would agree. Um, Thirdly, philosophical insight seems to suggest it doesn't require moral virtue. It implies that philosophical ideas are available to one and all, to the wise person, to the saint, and to the sinner. Now, this makes perfect sense if you understand what Descartes says about good sense. If we all have good sense, if it's the most evenly distributed thing in the world, we're not in the cave. Okay, and we don't need any special lifestyle in order to get us set up to take these sorts of claims about the cave seriously. So that's a good reason for why he might be proposing a provisional morality. That he really, as we said at the beginning, we wondered, does he not think this is important? Well, the idea of good things makes suggest that he doesn't think it's important. Okay, the only thing that's important now is a method, right? We all have good sense, it's using it well. Every person who has a bad life, a bad morality, or fails at life has just made an intellectual mistake. That seems to be Descartes' suggestion here. Nobody is a bad person, they're just not very bright, haven't done things the right way. And we can fix all that by giving them a method. That sounds a little bit odd and dangerous. So one question that comes up here is should we trust someone who is so cavalier about his moral choices? And maybe he's not even doing that. Maybe he's suggesting something else. Maybe he really literally means that I'll figure this out later. I've got to get working on that, and then morality is going to come later. Okay. One thing he does, and this is how he ends it, having thus provided myself with these maxims and having placed them in reserve, along with the truths of faith. So notice that point. So he, we know Descartes was a believing Christian, a Catholic, and he puts that as part of the things too. So he sees that as something that he's going to take seriously, which have ever occupied the first place in my belief. I came to the conclusion that I might with freedom set about ridding myself of what remained of my opinion. So again, it's not, he doesn't have any particular interest in morality. It seems like that's what he's saying. I've got to live some way, but it's just to clear this out so that I can get on with the work that I need to do. Okay, it's a very different attitude from Socrates. Socrates didn't think I need to find a place to get away to figure out everything, but rather I need to go out to the world and to the marketplace. And that's how we're all going to figure this out together. Okay, so something to keep in mind as we're trying to figure out the difference between the modern view, Descartes' view of philosophy, and the ancient view, the classical view, Plato's view. The next lesson we'll look at Descartes' method and try to get clear about how that works and what Descartes thought he was doing and some of the problems that people see with that. Thanks.